Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful edition of 15 Minutes of Fame. 15 Minutes of Fame is when we bring industry professionals into your home so that they can share their journey of their life with you. Today's a special edition. As you see, we have someone who's very familiar with us today, Miss Erika Vaughn. Everybody give it up for Miss Erika. We know Miss Erika from Make the Cut, our other podcast that we have, again with industry professionals. Hi, Erika. What you doing on this show today?
Hello, Miss Vaughn.
Looking all fabulous.
How are you today?
I am fabulous. I'm
Girl,
excited.
this was a fast beat today, girl. Woo!
Wonderful. It's different because normally we're in our baseball caps and sweatshirts. So it's
Baseball
good to
caps,
see.
no makeup, no nothing.
Yes. So listen. So what brought you over to my house today?
Okay,
What do you have up your sleeve?
we're doing another crossover. So from the 15 minutes of fame, we are now bridging our Make the Cut, because with Make the Cut, this is our Women's Month, and we had told you guys that we were going to bring on women, either talk about them or actually bring them on. My surprise was to actually bring my mentor, the woman who I would not have a career without this woman. And so that's why we wanted to bring her on, because she's so influential just to my everyday walk, my everyday being, and like literally everything that's on my resume is because of this wonderful, wonderful human being. Like literally, I would have no career without this woman. So let's get right into it. She really needs no introduction once you hear her name, because usually once you hear her name, immediately you think, wait a minute, could it be? And yes, it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you with the fullest of fullest hearts, and I really do hope that I can get through this interview without tears. And if I
Yep.
do, they're tears of joy. And so it's fine. So this is a composer of dances and entertaining theatrics. Ladies and gentlemen, Mercedes Ellington.
Woo! Welcome to the show.
Wow.
Hi. How you doing?
Mercedes Ellington. Like you are definitely like dance royalty.
Sometimes it freezes.
And even beyond dance royalty, just like it's such an honor to have you here. And I'm so glad that I get to share you with Dawn, because I talk to you all the time. Like I talk about you all the time. And I'm always telling people that literally I would not have a career without you. And like that's truth, 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 and more truth. And I'm so glad that God literally placed me right at your feet at the right time. And it's just been since.
Well, the feeling is actually mutual because Duke Ellington inspired the orchestra, which inspired him. He always gave tribute to the orchestra to be the ones and the machine that spurred him on to composing, because he would take the strong points of each of the members of the orchestra and compose featuring those things. And so each member had another thing. As you know, if you have ever known a musician, you know, hardly any one of them will agree with each other. But when
Right,
they're put into a certain situation,
right,
they can play fantastically.
right.
So
All
Erica,
right, Miss
before
Dawn Branch. So take it
oh,
over.
is it my oh gosh, okay, so understand this. If I get tongue tied, just hold me down, just hang in there. So I know that we introduced you already as a person of the arts and a person, a pioneer in the industry. But I want to back up because a lot of our audiences might not, for whatever reason, know who Duke Ellington was. So I want to give the honor to you
Absolutely.
to explain the significance of your grandfather.
Okay, I know I run into a lot of people who are not aware, this generation especially, who are not aware of the so called jazz era, which is the word my grandfather used to music, and he would explain it in those terms because it is comprised of so many facets of the different countries around the world. But here in America, it came into its own compositions depending on which part of America you were. So, having been brought over initially with the slave trade, it began to take different shapes and forms from when it went to New Orleans to when it went to Kansas City to Chicago to New York, and each of these cities had the jazz is. And so it's really a composite of different things. I don't know what he did in his spare time. In his spare time, he wrote music. His compositions and his catalog has been compared to the catalog of Haydn. Papa Haydn wrote so much music, nobody can figure out what time of the day he went to the bathroom. I mean, it's just as much as did he eat dinner, did he sleep, did he what the normal things that people do, because the compositions and the catalog of Duke Ellington numbers almost 3,000 compositions. And so he was always inspired by the orchestra. He was inspired by the gigs that they did, the places they went. Every time they would be invited to a different place, he would write as a thank you a suite in honor of that place. So he wrote the Queen's Suite when they invited him to England. He wrote the Afro-Eurasian Eclipse. He wrote when in London when they invited him to make a concert honoring Shakespeare. He wrote the Shakespearean Suite, which was Such Sweet Thunder. He wrote a lot of different suites that were dedicated to his travels around the world. You could tell where he went from looking at his music.
That is, I never knew that. Thank you for that. Now I have a question. He has seen you from a baby to an adulthood. Has he ever written anything for you in particular?
Well, I kind of like to have thought that he might have written or was thinking about me when he wrote Dancers in Love.
Wow.
Oh,
But you never know. I
you
mean,
never know.
he had a lady friends, and he would also, a woman that I worked for later in life, her name was June Taylor. She told me that he told her that he wrote A Train for her. Now, in fact, A Train was written by Billy Strayhorn,
Right.
and Ellington arranged it. But this was a way that musicians of talking to lady friends
Yep.
and convincing them to be more friendly.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
Oh
Thank
God.
you. What do we say?
No?
Take that note. Thank you for that. Okay. Um, so let me ask, do you play an instrument? Or is that something that you ever enjoy doing? Did you not like it? Like, let's talk about that. I'm interested.
Well, everybody automatically thought that I would be drawn to play the piano, which was my grandfather's instrument, although my grandfather always stated that the orchestra was his instrument. But I was drawn to the dance probably because in my early stages I had a problem with my circulation. So my grandmother who raised me, my mother's mother raised me, and the doctor advised her to keep that kid moving. So she enrolled me into dance class. And there were dance classes available on Tuesday in the grammar school that I went to. And like one of my first teachers was a woman called Madame Povich. And you didn't change your clothes or anything. You just change your shoes. And on Tuesdays, we held on to stage in the auditorium, and we did our dances to perform on St. Patrick's Day night, because all of these Catholic schools had great festivities to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. And that's when I learned the Irish jigs and reels. And so that was a big advancement of me towards tap dancing, because it's very similar. And there was a story by which my grandmother and I was so enthusiastic about these ballet classes, I wanted to take more. And Madame Povich had a studio downtown which had ballet classes on Saturday. And I begged my grandmother to have me enrolled in the Saturday classes. And she kept on trying and going and trying. And all the answer that we got was all the time that the schools was filled. There was no room. So my grandmother was a very politically minded woman. She worked at the polls. I mean, she was from the Jamaica, West Indies, but she was very Americanized, and she loved America, and she wanted to do everything possible. So she took my hand, went to the Reverend Mother, and said, "What is this?" We get the same answer, no matter how early we try. So it turns out she did not want really people of color to go down to her studio, but as a consolation Patrick's Day night celebrations.
Wow.
Look at that.
That must have been a tough time.
Look at that.
It, has it changed? I don't know.
No.
Yeah. But the
Not really.
persistence of your grandmother, I admire that. She was like, she didn't take that no for the answer. So you finally get in, or you finally get into a school.
Yeah.
And then you have the jazz. You learn what? Ballet, jazz, tap, all genres.
Well, there happened, fortunately, in that same neighborhood, there were twins, the Facey twins, and they were twins of color whose teacher was a partner of Pavlova, Anna Pavlova.
Anna Pavlova.
The
right?
Anna Pavlova.
So with that connection, as vague as it was, I started taking lessons with these twins. And the twins taught me as much of my own dance to get into Juilliard. And so I got into Juilliard with the vocabulary that I had learned from taking from these twins, and they had a studio space that they used at the 135th Street Y. And there was also another teacher called Sheldon B. Hoskins, and he was a teacher that Dudley Williams went to. And Dudley and I met that way a long time ago. When Dudley was sent to dance school because he had asthma, and they thought it would help his breathing. And
Wow.
that matched my reason. It was always health, poor circulation,
Right.
asthma, whatever. So that's how we got into the dance field in the very beginning.
Awesome. Now you do have some photos of you as a child in the leotards and tights. Would you care to share?
Yes.
Let's
This
see.
one,
Oh wow.
that was a recital of Sheldon B. Hoskins, and this was Lullaby and Goodnight. This was our dance for that. And another dance that we did with him, and we wore black leather point shoes so they wouldn't wear out, because pink satin,
Black leather point shoes.
black
Wow.
leather.
That's heavy.
Oh,
Oh yes. Oh wow.
look at
Wow.
that.
So
Mm-hmm.
that was, so you didn't have to pay.
Absolutely.
And so the black leather point shoes, those girls lasted forever.
I'm sure.
And
Wow.
they weren't that pliable, but
They
Mhm.
lasted.
yep.
Yeah. So I remember tapping on point shoes. Speaking of,
Oh,
let's get
yes.
it right.
Have the strongest feet ever.
Let me tell you, they have come a long way. What did you use in back then for the cotton or what did y'all use for the feet?
That what is that called? Not
Lamb's
Because I
wool.
remember my lamb's wool.
Lamb's wool.
Oh, you had lamb's wool then? Oh, okay. Okay. I
lambs. Well,
wasn't
now
sure.
they don't use anything. A lot of the ballerinas, they don't do anything.
But I think now they have like a cushion insert. So that's why too.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we were doing point shoes, they still had that wooden block, but now they have like the nice little cushion insert for them now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're in Juilliard. You get in
Yes,
there
I
by
get
the
it.
twins. Where are the twins? Shout out to the twins. Are you still in touch with them at all?
No, they passed away, and
Hmm.
but they did see me get into Juilliard, so that was their success. And here's me in a class at
Wow.
Juilliard.
So wait a minute. That's not a costume. That's your classroom attire.
This
That's what
was
you guys wore in class, Miss.
this was not as was a posed picture. It was going to be in their catalog, so they gussied us
Oh,
up,
okay.
Okay.
you know,
Yes,
for
for
the.
the attitude. You saw the attitude.
But this
So
was
yes.
this was my graduation piece out of Juilliard, and it's called Little Improvisations, which was composed by William Schumann, and the choreography was by Anthony Tudor. Now, when I went to Juilliard, it was the creme de la creme. Anthony Tudor was a teacher. Martha Graham was a teacher. Jose Limon was a teacher. I mean, you name it, they were all, and the companies of Martha Graham, the company members taught, and the company members of Jose Limon taught, and then we had guest artists who came in who taught, and it was like Doris Humphrey came, and there all of the you know famous stars of the dance, modern and ballet, came in to
Wow.
teach at Juilliard.
Whew.
Erica, I'm beat. Pick it up from here. I can't. I can't. I need a drink.
Right.
And I don't drink.
Well,
What's next?
I
Whew.
have, I have another picture of later on, and of course there's stories that go with it when I became a June Taylor dancer.
right. Now, was the June Taylor dancers, how soon after Juilliard? Like, was that before your Broadway or after Broadway?
It
How
was
soon was June Taylor?
June Taylor came at my first job after I graduated from Juilliard, West Side Story in Australia.
Wow.
Yes, Australia, the land of the emu and the
Tasmanian devil.
Tasmanian devil and the tarantula.
Right.
Ooh.
And I met up with all of them.
Look at that.
This is why she doesn't like outdoors. I heard
Right.
that story.
Right.
I can imagine. Jeez.
Now, how did that
That's a
audition come
gig.
about, Mercedes, with the
Well,
June Taylor dancers? And I think also explain what that is as far as comparing it to like the Radio City Rockettes,
okay,
like
yes,
Virgos.
the June Taylor dancers were a precision line on television that emulated the dancers of the day, like the Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall. Only the Rockettes, there were 32 to 34 women, and the June Taylor dancers were 16.
Okay.
The reason being, that's how wide they could be with a television screen.
Gotcha.
The Radio City Music Hall stage is wide enough to accommodate 32, 34, but the television was 16. So the reason I came into even that atmosphere at all, because in those days we knew we formed a club of people of color. We used to go to auditions on Broadway shows and things, knowing we weren't going to get the job because they were not people of color at all in anything. Coffee afterwards. And so we went to different things and got turned away. I remember going to audition for the musical that Diane Carroll was in, and they decided that we would be a distraction from Diane Carroll, so they didn't hire any women of color.
Wow.
And there were always reasons. But I was also getting jobs out of Jones Beach in the summertime at the Jones Beach Marine Theater, and June Taylor was the choreographer out there. And hordes of people used to perform. They would have a dancing chorus, they would have a singing chorus, they would have Guy Lombardo and main stage and a pontoon, and I mean, it was unbelievable. And so I did a couple of productions out there, and she became aware of me as a dancer. And somebody called me up one summer, it was in August, and said, "Are you going to audition for June Taylor's television, for the Jackie Gleason show?" And I said, I can't do that because my tap dancing is not that great. This is a friend, a dancer friend of mine. Come over to my house. We'll meet on the roof. I'll teach you the combination. I was there yesterday and I know the combination because I could kind of fake dance, tap dance. If and the key is you have to just be on the same leg. Doesn't mean you don't necessarily have to be making those sounds, but if you look like you're in the same leg as everybody else, then you got a shot. And I did take more tap lessons after that, but I went to the audition and I expected to be eliminated, but it was a chance to see some of my friends and everything. And I remember looking around at one point, you're there all day and you do all kinds of combinations, jazz combination, tap combination, and we did different types of formations. And of course, one of the key elements was that you needed to be friendly enough to get along with all of the other girls, because June Taylor would fire people every week if you were not nice. If you appeared with holes in your tights, you would get fired. If you did not have your full makeup on and hair, you would get regulations. And most of them, I think, were because she did not want Jackie Gleason to walk into the room and think that she hired a bunch of dogs. So we always had to be dressed to the nines. But I remember at the audition, I was looking around and there was only like 17 of us, and I said, well, she must have forgotten to say thank you and let me go. And then she made the announcement. Gleason came in the room. Lots of reporters came in the room. The producer came in the room, and they were all huddled, whispering. And then she said, welcome to the show. You are the June Taylor dancers. And I liked about faint, you know. I said, well, I don't know what this means, but I couldn't wait to get to a phone to call my mom in Philadelphia to let her know. And after me getting dressed, June took me aside and she said, there's going to be a lot of publicity about this, but I don't care. If you don't live up to the choreography, I will fire you.
Oh,
Oh
So
boy.
I went out and I found a phone in the street. I called my mom. I told her, she said she already knew it was on the
on
news.
the news. Absolutely.
So from that day on, and there was one year, that was my first year, was the year that Kennedy was assassinated.
Wow.
And that was the last year that Gleason did a show in New York, and then he moved to Miami Beach. And then the following year, when we moved to Miami Beach, he didn't like flying, so we took train from Penn Station, the old up there, but they had torn it down. But in any case, we went by train, and I didn't want to get out of the train until we reached Miami Beach, because I know we had to go through the South, and
Yep.
I was, still thinking about Billie Holiday and her strange fruit hanging from the trees and stuff
Yep.
like that. So I said, I'm staying in the train the whole time. But the train was catered by Jilly's. Steve was singing on the train. They
Wow.
had uh, a band on the train, and it was an incredible experience. But we made a pit stop for supplies somewhere around Alabama or something, and they wanted everybody to get out for photo opportunities and press situations and stuff. And I did not want to get out, but they said not a lot of dancers made the transition. So I went onto the platform. I had big sunglasses and a big hat, and I was lurking in the back near a door where I could make a fast entrance back into the train if something should happen. So I went out there, and I'm standing there, and the people were taking photos. The press was there, and all of a sudden, somebody from the back of the crowd yells out, "What's that colored girl doing up there?" And so I said, "Oh, here we go." And I was getting ready to make a fast exit into the train when Gleason reached out his arm and pulled me under his armpit, and he said, "You stay right here."
Wow.
Mm.
And from that time on, I think that not only on that, it was a Dixieland band. I mean, it was like from that time on, he had a protective feeling about me, and I'm sure that there were people looking out for me. As I found out later, he had intended to write an opera with Duke Ellington. They were supposed
Wow.
to write an opera together.
Look at that.
It's amazing how things work out and tie together, you know.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you were talking about how June Taylor wanted nice people.
Yeah.
And Dawn Branch and I talk about that a lot, as far as just how being courteous and how just being nice can actually help you get work. Like, you can train your dancer. It's hard to teach people character. And we talk about that so much. So it's so interesting to see, like June Taylor saying that same thing. And I remember even you as well, like you carried that over as well with all your dancers, where you're just like, look, I really need you guys to be nice, because you want people to be able to work together, and it shows from the stage. So I think
Well,
that's
it also
interesting.
matters that the choreographer, director, whoever, the staff, that they appreciate the talent that they are working with.
Right.
And that they feel that you can contribute just as much as they can. Like Ellington said that his orchestra members contributed just as much that as he did as a composer, because a lot of those members of the orchestra, they were also composers in and of themselves. And some of the big hits that he had from their solos, they would make it come up to something. So you can't ignore that talent. You can't,
Right.
you have to encourage that talent.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback on the comedy of the non-tapping, because Erika has explained to me before that she has gotten gigs where she had to fudge the tap. Was this something that you learned from Mrs. Ellington, or is this?
No, you know what's so odd, Dawn? Okay, and I don't know if there's so much history like this. It's interesting. So I had done a show with Mercedes, but prior, and was there tap dancing in the Christmas show in Indianapolis,
I think
Mercedes?
there was. There might have been a bit, but
Okay.
it wasn't too
It wasn't too much. Okay.
No.
But so when I went to play, like, I could tap, but I wasn't a hoofer. And the thing is, for Play On, what I remember distinctly, especially going to the audition, is that it was a lot of hoofers. So that's when I was just like, ooh, this is a different alley. But she's right. Like, I didn't learn how to fake it until I make it. Because remember, we had Delphine. So Delphine wouldn't let me fake it.
I know. Delphine, the line dance queen.
That's right. So yeah, so I wasn't allowed to fake it. But yeah, but I did not think that tap would be my bread and butter, and that's what happened. And I think, like, say, even with, I think what's so interesting is almost how our dance lives have paralleled. So like, say, even with me, when I auditioned for Play On, is not ready, but there were so many talented people in the room who had already done Broadway. And when I first got hired for Play On, that was the musical that I first did, my Broadway debut. And but I wasn't hired as ensemble. I was when you were doing Sophisticated Ladies, you were hired as an understudy. Is that correct?
Me?
Yeah.
I was hired. See, I wasn't supposed to be in that show at all.
See? Right.
Can we let's just introduce to the audience about Sophisticated Ladies, and I want them to understand how your grandfather created the whole musical score, and how did that come about? How did it even happen?
Sophisticated Ladies was the brainchild of a man called Manny Fox, of the Fox theatrical family. Charles Fox, Bernard Fox, all of these people were involved either in production, in lighting design, in some aspect of the theater. And he was also a very good friend of my father and a very big fan of Ellington. And he always believed that Ellington belonged on Broadway. So he kept on badgering my father and badgering my father. And finally, my father said, oh, okay, fine. Because he said, now, what does that involve? the orchestra, how do I pay them? What do they get? There were a lot of problems that had to be solved with that production, especially with the music, because the orchestra members were on the stage. They were not in a pit. And so they were vacillating back and forth. How can we afford to pay the orchestra members as actors? So they hired the orchestra as a featured a featured section, specialty act. And that way it could be affordable for them to hire and pay them, and for them to be appearing on the stage at the same time. And my father asked me who would I suggest to be a choreographer, and I suggested Donnie McHale, because Donnie McHale, I had seen his choreography for the ALA company, and I knew that he was a good storyteller, and he had both ballet and modern aspects to his choreography. And so Donnie became the first choreographer involved in Sophisticated Ladies. Now Donnie started working with me as an associate, because I would suggest different people, but he never thought that I wanted to be actually in the show. And I said, of course I want to be in the show. And so he said, well, okay, but you'll have to be in the chorus. So I said, I don't care. I'll be in the chorus. And what happened is that I became one of the understudies to Judith Jamison,
Mm-hmm.
because Judith was she had already left Alvin Ailey Company, and this was her first gig after leaving Alvin. And of course, Alvin and Ellington had worked together for a long time, and Judith had also worked with Ellington Music for many of the pieces in the repertoire. And so and Judith was, nobody knew that Judith could sing. I mean, not a lot of people, but she could sing. And so I ended up being like one of the understudies to Judith, and an associate choreographer with Bruce Heath.
Yep.
And then I was it was a strange combination, because anytime we would think of a number and Judith would turn it down and I would volunteer, I'll say, I'll do it. So it, like Old Man Blues was supposed to be a number with Judith and Hinton Battle.
Wow.
And Judith said, no, I don't think so. And I did it I ended up doing it. So there were numbers like that. And it was a very clouded history of Sophisticated, because when we first got together, there was one script by John Gill. It was supposed to be a musical about the orchestra. And so there was a script involved, and it was written by, So they had some really incredible people connected with the creation of the show. But the producers, the 5 main producers, were producing together for the first time.
Wow.
And they did not really know, each of their history or about much of what was intended. And in the end, it ended up with people being called in to fix the choreography, like when Donnie McHale was not a tap choreographer, so Gregory Hines asked them to hire Henry Latang. Henry Latang came in to choreograph the tap sections, and he was responsible for, like, Greg Burge was a tapper. Hinton was not necessarily a tapper, but he could tap.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up using Henry Latang's choreography, and then with the massive reconstruction of the show came, where they threw out the book altogether and decided it was going to be a review. And it was all kinds of changes were happening, and so we were rehearsing one show during the day and performing another show at night. And it was such conflama out on the road, you would not believe it. And they became patient with Gregory for not learning quickly enough. And
Wow.
he had the most changes.
Yeah.
And so they fired Gregory out of town. And we're here we
Mm.
are. I was in Washington or Philadelphia, and he was sent down. He was in the station at the Penn station getting ready to come back home. And we were supposed to be performing the full house auditorium with everybody, every seat filled, and the cast got together and refused to go on without Gregory.
Look at that.
Wow.
So
Solidarity. I know.
Harry Klausner and Phyllis Hyman went down to the Penn station to beg Gregory to come back. And because of their insistence, he came back.
Woo.
And the
Mm.
next night he came back, he performed, and so did the cast.
Look at that.
Wow. What a story.
Wow.
It was a time. I mean, and later on, when they had that thing called simulcasts,
Mm-hmm.
they were doing a simulcast, and nobody had ever done anything like that before. Equity didn't know what to charge. They decided that we should be paid the same thing as we would be if we had a cast album. They didn't do any research. They didn't know what to do, and so we decided to to picket. So some of us were picketing outside the stage, outside the theater, while they were doing the performing. They had to call in some of the California cast members to substitute for the people who were picketing outside. And by that time, Gregory had left the show, so Maurice Hines was
Okay.
paid his part. He was picketing with us. Judith was picketing with us, and a couple of the other principals were out there. But the chorus was all out there. And my father he peeked out, not peeked out. He came out of the stage door and demanded me to come inside. And I said, no, I'm not coming inside. And I stayed out there, which caused a little friction, if you can imagine, between us. But
Mm.
eventually, nothing was ever really decided. All of the unions were really stopped that whole simulcast situation, because if you're going to be able to buy a tape, why are you going to spend the money to go to see a show?
Live show. Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Nothing like live Broadway, which because of COVID, which we can get into later. Um, I want to segue now into choreography because we talked pretty much about your training and then you pioneering with June Taylor and then working with your grandfather's piece. But now I want to hear your voice. When did you say, enough with this? I can do more. I want to see a change and go. I'm ready.
Okay. Well, I never really left the forming aspect of my that maybe it's time for me to shift gears a little bit. And so I would do different pieces of choreography. I had a dance company for a while, my own dance company with Maurice Hines. We toured. We were supposed to do a tour that involved Hong Kong, Taipei, and 6 cities in Japan, which we did, but without Maurice, because Maurice got the job of the Cotton Club movie.
That's right.
Yes, I remember that. Okay.
Yep. So he did the Cotton Club movie. I went out and got a friend of mine, Bernard Johnson, to take his place. And Bernard Johnson was a producer, director, choreographer, fashion designer, costume designer. And he filled in all of those things as well as being a performer while we went to
Wow.
that on that tour.
Wow.
And he was from Detroit, and he had an outlook on life like no other. He
Mhm.
came up with things like, if you want to know very much changing, you look out the window, see what the white people are wearing, and you put on one more layer. And he would give advice like that at the same time, when we were going around Mount Fujisan on the bus, he was afraid of heights.
Okay.
So he was lying on the floor of the bus saying over and over again, must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free.
Look at that.
He would come up with these things, and he's such a weird combination of personalities, but he was always in good spirits, and trying to promote good spirits and amongst the cast, because we went through some hard times. Touring is no fun,
No.
and it's we came
And
through
funding,
some
getting the
messes.
funding for
Oh
all of
yeah.
that. At
Yeah,
that
yeah.
time, that must have been so difficult. But I mean, it happened, meant to be. That man came in, he was able to fill 18 hats, Erica. I mean, that's just a
Yeah,
blessing right there.
absolutely. Now,
Mhm.
Mercedes, how would you, or like as a choreographer, because I know even when we were, anytime I've worked with you, I think it's very interesting, like even how you teach your dancers, because you have a way of hearing the music differently. You hear the music like a musician, like your father, like your grandfather. And a lot of times, even with your dance, because I know a lot of times that's what you're saying. You're like, listen for this. And like, so talk to us about that, especially with your choreography, just like how you really do hear music in a different way.
Well, it's like when you take the different sections of the orchestra and you follow the line of their melody or the line of their input of what they're playing at the time, the arrangement that they're doing to the music, you can choreograph to that and use those rhythms and use that melodic line to complement the rest of the band, the rest of the members of your dancers. So when you have multiple group of people on the stage, you can use those dancers as if you were handing out music to musicians, has in mind their own section, or they can be, if they're alone or if they're with one other person or two other people, they have their own section that can work and mesh in with the other sections, and either they have their solos or their feature time, or they are working together. And so it's almost like, when Bach does his fugues and things like that, and you do a fugue form in your formations. And the reason that I could come up with all of that was because of
Yeah.
Juilliard. People say, because those were classes that we had to take. We had lessons in, we had to be able to read music. We had L&M, literature and materials of music. We had music and dance history. And we had all these classes that kind of taught you so that you would be able to speak to a musician and an
Mhm.
accompanist in terms that he would be able to understand.
Right.
So automatically it gave you a link that was, some, because sometimes when you're teaching a class, and there used to be a time when there were live pianists teaching a class, you would be able to explain to them what it is or what kind of music you wanted to do your frappe or your tendu, and they would understand what the tempo would be and
Yes.
how the accent should go.
Now, I
Okay.
have a question about choreography. Do you prefer the thought, the movement, the sound, or in what order out of the three to work? Do you want to hear the music first, see it and move? Like, what moves you?
Magic moves me. The seemingly, and because it reaches into a person without them having to think about their limitations. And so it makes the person themselves be confident that they can are capable of giving something that nobody's seen before.
Hmm.
No, thank you for that. I want to like take a break and like ask you like other stuff. Like, do do you have classes on choreography? Like for people who are like me, I'm a budding young choreographer. I go total by instinct. Um, but it would be great to study. So I just wanted under someone like you. I didn't know if you offered those classes or
No,
anything.
I don't teach these days because um, there's been a lot of teaching expect certain things from a teacher. I don't like to make negative corrections. It's not that I flatter you all the time. I will point out things that you could improve upon, but I don't like to, you know, some people just bash people and make them feel awful. I mean, it's bad enough anyway for you to pull yourself together to get to a class, to pay that money, to get your, your strength and do your, who knows what kind of turmoil or what you had to go through to get to that class in the first place. And I'd like to reach out to the people after they're in the class to just, it's a fairy tale world. Leave that outside, and here you are in your own magic kingdom. This classroom. So I don't like people saying negative to each other, and I don't like the teacher, me, saying negative things. There's very little to be learned from negativity. You point out the positive aspects, and then you open up people's minds to a lot of things that they may never have heard of before. Like I always joke about Elizabeth Streb. And Elizabeth Streb has this kamikaze choreography because she's got people banging into each other and falling down and jumping off of cliffs and all of this stuff, and I'm saying, holy, what, how did she get this idea? Having conversations and everything, and she's like a normal person, really. And I said, what is it that got you to this point besides doing something so off the cuff that nobody would have ever thought of anything like that? Like Pina Bausch would never have done something like this, or somebody else. I was trying to think of the most modern person I could think of, and she said, well, it's the energies that actually in contact with each other. So, I mean, it made sense when she explained it, but I never would have thought.
So looking, there are a few young choreographers up and coming. Do you have anyone in particular that has your eye that you're looking at and saying that one has it? I can't wait to see this one in 10 years.
Well, Dorance is one of the people that I think is really interesting to watch, um, and a developing person because of the way that she uses her company and also her repertoire. She's an interesting mix of different types of things, and she understands. I think she understands the importance of getting away from reality. And that this is an art form where you can bring different things to the audience that would be not necessarily translated in a better way had they read a book about it or had they seen some other an opera or some other way of communication other than the dance, because the body is, this is what we have. We have these arms and legs and whatever, and they are very important to us. I mean, right now, I can appreciate the importance because I'm sitting here with I have three pieces of titanium in me, and I have and I'm still dancing because now I've transitioned into the field of competitive ballroom dancing. So I. I just don't feel that you ever stop. Like, I don't think musicians should ever stop. I don't think that dancers should ever stop. People in the arts, you make a segue, but you don't stop.
Yes, yes, as you see. We have made a
It's
segue on to YouTube. Never stop. I might not move like I used to, but we're here.
We
I
are
want to know
here.
about the ballroom, but I don't want to take over. Erica, your turn. What do you have from Mrs.
No, no,
Ellington?
no, no. Let's talk about the ballroom because you've been doing the ballroom for a
Mhm.
long time. And
yes.
that's like
And
a
I could I just
passion.
say I saw a video. I wanted to see if we can get the video, but I mean, and she does a twirl at the end, Erica. You got to see it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So she's
Amazing.
been doing this ballroom for a
In
while.
heels.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Let's talk about those heels. And that's the first thing, the big adjustment that I had to make, because one of the pieces of titanium that I have is in my big toe, and it was a bad operation because the doctor cut the bone too short, so the piece is out of place. So I am still working with it, and I've been going to Pilates and making adjustments, muscular and skeletal adjustments to strengthen the bones and the tendons to get into the correct spot. Because right now, like when I do ballroom, I tape my foot into place to put the ballroom shoe, because the Latin section, which is I'm in the Latin division, those are toes out shoes. They are not
Yeah.
enclosed shoes. The
Okay.
enclosed shoes are for waltz, Viennese waltz, tango, but you wear for the Latin division, the toes are out. And so I make the adjustments that I have to secure my foot into the shoe so that I don't fall out of the shoe or something untoward doesn't happen. And it only points out the basic training that you've had and your or conversation with, no, you will do this, you are not going to flake out, this is what where we are doing this together, and I am not having this sitting down or whatever, no excuses. And it was fun to me because you get a chance to work with all of this different kinds of music. Now Latin division involves samba, rumba, cha-cha, paso doble, and jive. Now, the people who put these sections together are English. It's from Blackpool. Blackpool, England created all of these. What they had about, or what they had to say about all these Latin rhythms, I don't know. They're the ones who are responsible for the different divisions and the categories, the bronze, silver, gold, and all of the different degrees and everything. So
Mhm.
we have, of course, have not had a competition in a while, but one of the last competitions I was in Cuba,
Nice.
and we went to Cuba, which was like, oh God, unbelievable. Cuba,
Mhm.
poor Cuba. But we won two silver, two gold, and a trophy. My teacher is my partner, Michael Choi, and his wife Vanda Bolakova is a ballroom champion, and she is in a different division, but she also coaches me some of the time, and together they make a great pair because they they understand a lot that is unspoken about a partnership, so, and this was the thing, if you can understand the transition that I had to go through from being a line precision dancer with a
Right.
bunch of people to being a solo, or a person, a dancer on my own, to being a partner dancer, those are whole three things are totally different mindset.
And how long does it take to break a partner in? Like, let's say something happens to him and he says, "Oh, my cousin Carlos." What's like, talk to us about the chemistry and how important it is.
Well, chemistry has a lot to do with it because you have to want to do it in the first place. And once you pass that, then that obstacle, then you can go on to how tall is he? Do I have to make a height adjustment, or arm adjustment, or positions? Because all of those things are specified. They're not up for grabs. I mean, there's a difference between the arm being here and the arm being here and the arm being here or here. It's just as particular as ballet positions.
Yes.
And it's like with the mood of the situation and how you approach the beat. Some dancers have a problem dancing with each other because they feel where the beat is in different places. Like if you're a little ahead of the beat and your partner is a little behind the beat, there's going to be a situation. So you have to make all those adjustments. And of course, being you don't have to be best friends, but you have to have a working relationship whereby you're learning. Now it was another because I was a choreographer, I had to shut my mouth and don't choreograph. I had to He's the one who is the teacher, choreographer, and partner. So he makes up every once in a while. Now I feel comfortable making a little suggestion, but
Okay.
not necessarily. I can't be the boss.
Okay.
Okay. I want to kind of go back just a little bit in terms of your choreography and almost like a full circle moment. So, first African American for the June Taylor dancers. Then I also remember like you choreographed for the Radio City Rockettes during their diversity, I think for choreographers as well. So
Yes.
let's talk about like even how that happened, because that was the platform that actually got me to get on the line for
Yes.
Radio City
Yeah.
Rockettes. But it was because they lacked the diversity for the choreographers as well as their dancers, but they were looking for too diverse for their choreographers. So I want you to talk about that as well, Dawn. So not only does she choreograph for dancers, but at one point she was also choreographing for figure skaters.
Shut up. Oh,
Yes,
wow. Double
absolutely.
axle.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. There's so much vocabulary in your head. You have ballet, you got jazz, you got African terminology. Like, Lord. Okay, go ahead. I'm ready.
Well, it came to pass that when I was a kid, my grandmother used to take me to a place called Iceland. And this was an ice skating rink. I believe it was downtown. This was a big deal because we lived on Convent Avenue between 142nd, 141st Street.
Harlem. Oh,
Yes,
that's my girlfriend lived over there. Okay.
uh,
Iceland and
By
40.
City College. Is that by City College?
City College, yes.
Yes.
And I was a neighbor of Alexander Hamilton because Hamilton House, his house was right next to my apartment. They've moved the house now into the park, but it used to be right there next to the church and next to my apartment building. And so we used to see the students walking by from. They would take the A train, get off at 145th Street, go up the hill on 145th, and go along Convent Avenue to the college. So we'd see a lot of students that way. But that was that was an area that was so incredibly mixed. There were people who were stars. There was a classical pianist, Philippa Schuyler, who lived in that neighborhood. Mantan Moreland, who was the Charlie Chan, slapstick comedy guy in the old movies. He lived in that neighborhood. Um, Lee Chamberlain, the actress, her real name, she's gonna kill me if she hears me. Alberta LaPala was her name, but Lee Chamberlain was an actress who lived in that neighborhood. There was also everybody would run to the window and watch this strawberry pink fish-tailed convertible Cadillac. Sugar Ray Robinson would drive down Convent Avenue, and he drives slow enough so everybody could get a look.
Oh.
And it was an amazing time that, that was fraught with different feelings of are you going to make it or are you not.
Okay, I want to take
And
us
it was
really quick.
I mean kind of yes.
Apollo Theater. Talk to us. Small Paradise. Like, can we just take us back, like commercial like this, and
Yes.
take us back? What was it like back then? Please.
Well, if you knew 125th Street, it was a very elegant place. There were not a
Oh, the
lot.
tears are coming. I can't.
There
I
were not a
can't.
lot of vendors in the street. It was a place where you dressed up to go to the Apollo. Of course, amateur night was a big favorite, but most of the stars of the day were not anything unless they went to the Apollo. The Apollo also on 125th Street, there was an elegant restaurant that was had tablecloths, and tablecloths on the tables was a sign that there was a certain price range. And this was an elegant, you had to be dressed to go into those restaurants. And then there was the Teresa Hotel. The Teresa Hotel is the sister building of the Plaza Hotel. And that hotel suffered when Fidel Castro came to New York, and they opened their doors to Fidel Castro and his crew, and they were dissed for that, and it went downhill after that. But before that, it had boutiques in the hotel. I remember my great aunt, Duke Ellington's sister, used to take me shopping in the boutique and get me these dresses that I unheard. I mean, I wore uniforms half my life because I went to parochial schools. But when she always wanted a girl anyway. She had two sons, and she would dress me up, and she would take me to the shops, and she would get all this stuff. And I mean, and it was incredible the things that went on as far as the as clubs, and besides, it was a whole system in the ballrooms, and ballrooms were the thing of the Audubon ballroom and the Savoy ballroom. This was a time when ballrooms were really at their heyday, and so people dressed up. And I remember, I still have pictures of my mom, and she, in her high school days, she belonged to a club called the Noycerels, and they were a ballroom crew that got together and created dances to amuse their parents at the intermission of their dances. So
Wow.
when the parents had their dances in the ballrooms, the intermission, they would get up and they'd put on a show. And my mom was a choreographer, because one day I was doing something. I think I was doing a shim sham, and she started to do the shim sham. And I said, "Where did you learn to do that?" And she told me everybody in those days did the shim sham.
Right. Thank you for that. I worked at the Apollo Theater for a minute, and you're in there and you're just like the history.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to and also we danced at Small's Paradise. Like I just
Oh my God. Yes.
around
Yeah.
that whole time just wondered what that was all about. And I wanted to know if you danced there, if you were on the stage, if you choreographed. Like remember the Apollo when it was on TV? Like it's just all of that history is just something that these young people that are going to watch this
Yeah.
show, they need to know about it. They
Yeah.
need to know about the history and the culture.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done, Erika. Go
Oh,
ahead. What you got? Sorry.
it was so nice. Like it was so interesting, like just hearing her reminisce, because she
Yes.
actually brought that to us as a cast when we were actually doing Play On. We were the
Yeah, can
the
we talk about
Didisons
that?
of
What was it
Harlem.
about?
And
What
so
was Play On about?
Well,
Describe
Play
Play
On was
On.
the brainchild. The Play On was the brainchild of Sheldon Epps, and he wanted to do a counterpoint between Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, and Duke Ellington's music. So he put it together. So it actually was the story of Twelfth Night put into the 1920s,
yeah,
and then using Duke Ellington's music. And
yeah.
I just saw a thing today on television about Frankie Manning, because Frankie Manning, I called him in to be a consultant, and we learned a lot of stuff from Frankie Jr.
Hells a poppin'. Anytime I think about him, I always think about Hells a poppin'.
Yes, yes.
I want
Flights
to
of
put
doom, I mean, you, the lifts.
Yeah.
God.
so I wanted to put Erika on the spot real quick. What did you see in Erika that made you say, "That's this girl got it. I want to hire her." So you can share?
Well, it was her a combination of her energy. I mean, a lot of people have energy, but her attitude with her energy was so conducive. I mean, your eyes just went over, and it was like every time you try to watch something else, say you go back and say, "What's she doing now?" So it's a return to somebody who was having a good time, and you wouldn't worry, because sometimes I get so worried about somebody, like either they're going to hurt themselves or they're going to hurt somebody else. And I'm saying she knows what she's doing. I'm really confident in what she's doing. I could be comfortable. I could sit here and know that everyone is safe because Erica's on the stage. I don't have to, you
Oh.
know. She knows the theater. I mean, you have to have. It's like with precision dancers, you have to have eyes in back of your head. You can't be just, tunnel vision.
Mhm.
You have to know
Mhm.
what's going on with everybody around you, which is how people should be walking down the street now, you know. But
Good to know, Erica. You're a great contribution to the show.
Ha ha ha.
Because Erica just went through the audition for a class. Tell
So
about
that, yeah. So Miss Ellington, do you remember? And you
oh,
probably do not, but I always tell this as my horror story just to give other young people, just to inspire them. I totally, because for Play On, we actually did the singers call first. Usually they do the dancers,
yes.
but for some reason, because I had gotten invited, I had gotten an invited call. And for some reason, for the invited call, you guys decided to have us sing first.
Oh God.
And I was like, ooh, I usually dance first,
Mm,
and then they just give me a pass with
yes.
the singing. But when you guys made me sing first, I was just like, wow. And so once again, I was just like, well, like Dawn said, this is gonna be a nice little class, and it's gonna be real quick. I'm gonna come in and say hello to everybody, sing my little song, and keep it moving.
Oh God.
But what was so
and look what
interesting,
happened.
Dawn, is so you're singing Duke Ellington's classic songs, right? And so usually with the classics, everyone knows the words, and half the time they're singing along with you. So what does your friend Erika do? I'm so nervous, I forget the words and start creating my own words. And I'm looking at them because I could not remember the words. And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, this is a classic song. There's Duke Ellington's granddaughter. I've actually worked with Mercedes Ellington, and she's probably like, really? Are you really not remembering the words right now? But I never stopped. Like, I totally did
That's
not
right.
stop and was like, I don't know what you guys heard. I know I sang the right words, but in my head, I knew it was totally wrong. Miss Ellington, do you remember
I
that?
don't remember that, but when you doing that, don't how do you think scatting began?
That's true, but I did not scat.
Okay. and also nowadays, can you imagine what people are doing now? I mean, sometimes I look at these shows like America's Got Talent or some
Right,
other things, and I'm seeing what people are doing and say, hey, what is that? I mean, it works.
Mhm.
Sometimes it
right,
doesn't, but it works. And you
right.
say,
But that's why I always say whatever is for you. Because even with that huge,
See?
huge mistake,
That's the
like I
truth.
still made into the show. So I knew it had nothing to do with me, thank goodness. Um, yeah, but that was like horror story. I'm just like, wow, I just forgot all the lyrics to known classic.
and I know how
I
many
just want
Oh
singers
yeah.
done the same thing.
this
Go ahead, Dawn.
internet connection. Just behind her, you have a poster there. I just wanted to know if you could pretty much just share with the audience that poster and just talk briefly about what's going on back there.
This one,
Yes, ma'am.
this is the play on poster.
Hmm.
This
I
Yeah,
didn't
is
even.
the play on poster,
that's it.
and it has signatures of all of the cast members. And of
Oh,
course, it has all of the people, the staff, who was working, the producers, the director, everybody. Um, I don't know if it had Frankie's name on the poster.
I think he is on there as he was,
Consultant?
yeah, he's on there, I think.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So
As a consultant. He's on there as a consultant.
okay.
Mhm.
So I mean, it was a big deal. It was a big business to have posters from the shows, from every show, and there was a store that was dedicated to selling posters from each of these shows.
Right.
I don't
Um,
remember that. Okay.
business
Yeah.
gone.
Hey, Erica, how do you like Miss Ellington's top?
I love it. The hat as well as the shirt. Like we're loving your ensemble. So can you tell us about your ensemble for tonight, Miss Ellington?
Well, my ensemble happens to be the top is belonged to my grandfather, and it's a little there are a couple of little teeny holes in it, but I like to wear it. It's cashmere, and it fits me.
Sorry.
But it fits me. I like big. I like clothes to look big on me. You know, I like
Gorgeous.
big
The color
blousy.
is everything. When she
But
told me that, I almost fainted, Erica. So I just thought you would faint with me.
Look, and I can guarantee, Dawn, without even seeing her, I guarantee you have on blue socks, don't you? They're not blue to usually she matches from head to toe,
I know, I know, I know. Like this blue piece here,
right?
blue
And she is the sock queen.
oh yes,
She has the most exquisite collection of socks.
yes, yes. I do, I do.
Fun. So
Unbelievable.
in closing, I know you're very private. You just have so much information. If anyone wanted to reach out to you for a lecture or to contribute to your foundation, which I want to close out with, if you can briefly just talk about the Duke Ellington Center for the Arts, how do they do that?
Well, I'm not a social media person, so I personally don't have any information that way. But do believe that we have information via the Duke Ellington Center for the Arts. That is on one of those social media things, and through that, you can hook into a lot of the things that we do. We've been doing series of concerts, and we started out doing things at Birdland, and the guy who was peeking around the corner, my videographer and saving grace, is a primary source of a lot of the footage and that we've been dealing with, because we're dealing with hard places. I mean, the size of Birdland, you would not think that you could fit a group of musicians. It counted 21 musicians on that bandstand and a group of dancers. I mean, we did the Nutcracker, and I had a belly dancer for the Arabian dance.
Wow.
She had to work in front of the saxophone section, and the saxophone section was very distracted, I can tell you.
I am sure.
That's funny.
But we did
I
it.
have your thing. It's hold on, I don't have my glasses on. Oh God. DECFA.org.
Yes, DECFA.
Yes,
Meaning
I
the
said it right.
Duke Ellington Center for the Arts. Yeah.
So if anyone out there wants to help sponsor, I'm not really sure how it goes, but I'm sure you'll go online and you'll read about it. Erica, are you familiar with the Center for the Arts? Have you worked with them?
Did we do any of our shows with them, Mercedes?
I'm not sure, because we just started, because this Zoom thing is very new.
Right.
So we've only been working in the last year or so.
They didn't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Erica, you should get involved. Get
Yes,
to life. Thank you.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So in closing, Erica, you go, and then Miss Ellington, please. Any last questions you have?
Actually I'm thinking for parts for both of you. So just so you know.
Ooh, okay. We're ready. Look, we're ready.
You're ready. I'm gonna get.
We're on a track of doing all of Ellington's themed albums.
Wow.
So get
Okay.
ready.
Well, I can tell you now, Miss Mercedes Ellington, you are going to love Dawn Branch's choreography. She's a beautiful and wonderful choreographer.
Great.
She's a brilliant dancer, but she really she's a wonderful, brilliant
Thank
choreographer, and I
you.
really think you'll love her work.
Well, we're gonna
So,
find
Thank
out.
you so much.
absolutely, you'll love
But
her.
with you saying that, I have to shout out Bernice Johnson. That's where I grew up.
Oh
That's
my
my home
God, Bernice
studio.
Johnson.
Yes, and her husband Bud Johnson. So my dance family would kill me. I learned it all from Bernice Johnson. So you're gonna give it up to her. Of course, performing arts, and but BJ put it
Yes,
in me.
yes,
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
great.
So Miss Ellington, last closing words. Anything? I'm
Well,
sweating over
it's just,
here.
I mean, I really, I
You have
know.
no idea, and
I
no
am too,
shade
but
to anyone else who haven't been on 15 Minutes of Fame. But guys, this is Mrs. Ellington. Sorry. Erika, thank you. I'm gonna be quiet. Go ahead. Closing words. I'm
no,
sorry.
I just wanted to thank you for having me do this because there's a lot of information that I feel is necessary to pass on so people will know. It really is a bug to read things in bona fide newspapers and magazines and things that don't really do the research. So I think it's important for programs like this to expose the younger generations coming up with what is happening or what has happened, and just so they can remember and know for a fact why things happen the way they do.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Don't take somebody's word for it. You know, you just like you're going to the library to do research. This is the research now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So hook in, you know.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thank you. You know, I love and adore you so very much.
And I love you too.
So thank you for taking your time
Yes.
out to be with us tonight.
Well, I love you madly. And in
Oh,
closing, I love you madly. And 4 kisses, one for each cheek.
Oh. Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Oh. PG. You promised me PG. I'm kidding. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Until next time. Thank